Welcome back, everybody, for issue 68 of the Build the Millennium Falcon, and this is the review issue. So let's go ahead and get started. The Gauntlet Starfighter. So this may be a bit more um, significant with the Mandalorian show. You might find this more interesting. The Comric class was designed and built in secret by engineers and technicians loyal to Mandalorian Death Watch, a warrior cult that craved a return to Mandalore's warlike past and desired to abolish the pacifism of the new Mandalorians. The group used factories on Mandalore's moon, Concordia, which were regulated and supervised by Governor Pre Vizsla. Vizsla had secretly begun to rally his forces on Concordia, and members of the Death Watch made several terrorist attacks in Mandalorian capital city. The leader of the new Mandalorians, Duchess Satine Kryze. Now, this name may be significant. If you do have Disney Plus and you are anxiously anticipating the Obi-Wan series, Obi-Wan has a connection with Satine Kryze. So that might be something we may end up learning. Trusted Governor Vizsla as a loyal ally in the crusade against the Death Watch. Little did she know that Vizsla was, in fact, the leader of her most dangerous adversary. Concordia. While Mandalore itself was a desolate world, made so by years of conflict, the moon of Concordia retained much of its natural beauty. At the end of the Civil War was the ascension of the new Mandalorians. Surviving members of the warrior caste were exiled to the moon. They were thought to have died out, killing each other off through bitter infighting. In fact, the survivors banded together under the leadership of Pre Vizsla to become Death Watch, hiding out in the abandoned mines of Concordia. And this is Pre Vizsla there. The Comric was proudly finished with white, blue, and gray paint, faithful to Mandalorian tradition. It also followed the peculiar configuration of Mandalorian craft. The central, sleek hull was flanked by two wing-like structures. These were positioned vertically while the ship landed, but when flying they could rotate to a horizontal position with the wings flanking the hull. This offered the fighter very impressive maneuverability for a ship of its size. The wings, which also functioned as the aft landing gear, housed essential engineering components. The ship was propelled by more than one type of drive, as a turbojet was inserted in the rear section of the hull to ensure quick getaways and rapid startups. Landed, the Cumric ship stood a little more than 13 meters high. Its large cockpit accommodated a crew of 4 with additional room for small cargo. However, the main hold could transport up to 24 passengers, mostly Death Watch troops who disembarked with their jetpacks to provide air support during combat situations. The ship itself had 2 forward laser cannons and 2 aft-facing cannons that could protect the boarding tube. Death Watch. Well, let's go through here. Pre-Vizsla, a member of the prominent Mandalorian clan Vizsla, succeeded in gaining Duchess Satine's trust when he functioned as Concordia's governor. In secret, Vizsla was gathering allies on Concordia for his beloved Death Watch. Vizsla's personal weaponry consisted of 2 Westar 35 blaster pistols and an ancient dark saber. If you've seen The Mandalorian, you'd recognize the dark saber. A weapon stolen from the Jedi Temple by Vizsla's ancestors centuries before. While the rogue Death Watch faction was preparing its coup on Mandalore, it kept a base on Concordia, guarded by 2 Gauntlet Fighters next to the Akajor-class shuttles. These were the largest ships in its possession. Death Watch leader Pre Vizsla's own fighter was simply christened Gauntlet. After he was unmasked as the leader of Death Watch, Vizsla still had high hopes that his alliance with Count Dooku and the Confederacy of Independent Systems would pay off. Instead, Dooku canceled the invasion when the Republic decided to let Mandalore keep its neutrality, and the Count rewarded Vizsla with a nasty lightsaber scar across his left cheekbone. Next stop for Vizsla was the snowy planet Karlak, before a new base was established on Zanbar, where more Death Watch zealots gathered. With the ship With the help of Darth Maul and Savage Opress, Vizsla planned another invasion of Mandalore. Although this took place and proved to be a victory for Death Watch, it also led to Vizsla's personal downfall as he was killed in a ritual combat when Maul questioned his leadership of the warrior group. Mission to Dathomir. After Pre-Vizsla's death, the remaining Death Watch forces continued to use the Khemric ships. Death Watch commandos Gar Saxon and Rook Kast took one to liberate Darth Maul from the Separatist Spire prison on Stygian Prime. When word of Maul's escape reached the Confederacy of Independent Systems and the Republic, plans were set in motion. Darth Sidious wanted to recapture Maul to lure out his old nemesis, Mother Talzin. While the Jedi hoped to avoid Separatist control of Mandalore, Maul himself used a Khemric fighter during the struggles against both the CIS and the Republic. While battling Republic forces on the Mandalorian supply post near Ord Mantell, Maul and Dooku escaped in the same vessel, which was later used by Saxon and Kast to escape with Maul after Darth Sidious succeeded in killing Mother Talzin on Dathomir. And we kind of mentioned Mother Talzin being killed in a previous review, so it shouldn't be a huge surprise, but needless to say, formative. Gauntlet was one of several new designs created for the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars animated series, although Clan Vizsla was already long established in Legends material, such as the comic series Jango Fett Open Seasons. Gauntlet debuted in the Mandalorian plot in Season 2 of the Clone Wars, and the ships made several other appearances whenever Death Watch featured. This class of the ship was first mentioned in Clone Wars Official Episode Guide Series 1 and 2 in 2010, and is not to be confused with the similar but much smaller Akar Jor class shuttle. A new Mandalorian starfighter looking like a descendant of Gauntlet appeared in the second season of the animated series Rebels in 2015. Mysteries of Mortis. Now this is very interesting. Mortis was only accessible through a giant, seemingly impenetrable dark red crystalline structure known as the monolith that floated in the region called Wild Space, way beyond the outer rim. A few travelers who encountered it wondered if it was a natural formation at all, as it certainly didn't appear so. It even had the power to distort time, which led some to question if, in fact, Mortis truly existed at all. Yet Force users who visited Mortis were energized by it and were able to do things they would struggle to achieve on any other world. It is unclear whether the huge monolith, which appeared and disappeared at will, was a barrier that surrounded the planet entirely or a construct that acted as a gateway to access it. Once a being entered the realm inside the monolith, they encountered a planet covered with caverns, lush forests, and mountains that floated above the surface of the planet like islands. Physically, Mortis did not obey the normal laws of the universe, the floating mountains being just one example of this. Force ghosts. This is pretty significant. Most Jedi would, upon death, become one with the Force. However, a small number had learned a technique that allowed them to retain their own identities and to appear as spirits to others. Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn was one of those who had learned this technique and was able to draw on the power of Mortis to manifest as a Force ghost to Anakin Skywalker and Kenobi. Obi-Wan, spontaneously without intending to do so, used the power of Mortis to travel from the Sun's Tower-like abode to the monastery where the Father lived, all just by thinking about it. The Ones. Mortis acted as home to three impossibly powerful beings, the Father, Daughter, and Son, all of whom were Force avatars. All three seemed to be locked in an internal struggle for dominance over one another, always trying to overpower each other to take control. Within the realm of Mortis, the Son represented the dark side of the Force, in contrast, the Daughter who represented the light side. The father struggled to maintain the balance of force between the son and the daughter, acting as an intermediary when needed. Together they appeared to ensure that Mortis remained a fulcrum to or center point of the galaxy, and a conduit through which the force flowed. The three were able to change form at will and alter the landscape of Mortis to suit themselves. As their moods changed, the landscape would change around them to reflect their current dispositions. A number of buildings existed on Mortis while the father, daughter, and son lived there. It is uncertain as to whether these structures survived the passing of the three avatars. Indeed, the fate of the whole planet is still a mystery and may remain so forevermore. Just to add, in Legends, Luke and his son Ben had actually gone to Mortis, and it was quite the adventure. The death of the Ones. During the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Padawan Ahsoka Tano were drawn into the monolith and arrived on the mysterious surface of Mortis. From the moment they arrived, it was immediately apparent that this was no normal world. The three had been pulled into the realm by the father, who knew Skywalker was the chosen one, and had decided he was the only person capable of maintaining the balance between his two children once he died. This realization by the Avatars led to a huge struggle between them and the three Jedi. The contest culminated in the deaths of all three avatars and led to the restoration of the balance of the Force on Mortis. As soon as the father passed, Kenobi, Skywalker, and Tano were instantaneously returned to the point of time and space from which they had been drawn in by the monolith, along with the shuttle they arrived in. Skywalker and Kenobi learned that Mortis was a unique point in existence, through which all the force energy created by every living thing in the universe flowed. It was an impossibly significant place and one that stood as the balance point of the universe. The Mortis Dagger. The father kept a mystical dagger on an altar in his monastery on Mortis. This weapon, which was capable of killing his otherwise immortal children, could be used to control them. When the father was dying, he attempted to persuade Anakin Skywalker to take his place, but after the young Jedi refused, the son tried to lure Skywalker to the dark side. This forced the daughter and Obi-Wan Kenobi to retrieve the dagger from the altar of Mortis in an effort to gain control, but the son took the dagger and used it to kill Skywalker's Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. When he then tried to kill the father, the daughter took the blow instead. She used her remaining life force to resurrect Tano, and in an effort to stop the son, the father turned the dagger on himself. His death robbed the son of his immortality, which allowed Skywalker to kill him with his lightsaber. The act restored balance to the Force, and the Mortis dagger, along with the entire planet, disappeared in a blinding white light. Okay, behind the scenes. The Mortis story played out over a 3-episode arc in Star Wars The Clone Wars during Season 3 of the animated TV series in 2011. Overlords, uh, Altar of Mortis, and Ghosts of Mortis, which aired on episodes 15, 16, and 17 respectively. Fans were divided on the Mortis arc as it seemed to raise more questions than answers. After the episode aired, supervising director Dave Filoni explained George Lucas intended the son to be influenced by two legendary Sith Lords, Darth Bane and Darth Revan. These characters were actually modeled and designed in the Clone Wars style, and scenes were created as layouts but never made it to animation. Filoni was very apprehensive with this sequence because the implications that the Sith Lords could separate themselves from the Force and somehow talk to the Son. Eventually, Lucas agreed that this scene should be removed because it did not fit with his bigger vision of the Force and what it means. So we were that close to seeing Revan. That's pretty close, guys. Smuggling Bosses. So we're continuing on with the smuggling side of things here. So the average freelance smuggler ends up running drop point deliveries. Such jobs are usually organized indirectly by seedy middlemen and women looking for some criminal organization or other. This business consists of recruiting smugglers so the real employers don't have to get their hands dirty. Jabba the Hutt was typical of such an employer, a crime lord whose operation flourished during the Clone Wars when the Republic's attentions turned to defeating the Separatists rather than to law enforcement. Willing to trade with both sides, Jabba made a fortune in the process, but he and the other Hutt clans weren't to have everything their own way. The notorious Black Sun Syndicate gave Jabba a run for his money. Originally led by fallen nobles from the fortress on Mustafar, the leadership of Black Sun was killed by Darth Maul, and the organization temporarily added to his Shadow Collective. At that time, it was everyone's guess who was really in charge of Black Sun. Trading terms. Smuggling contracts usually start in some backwater spaceport and end in a dark, dingy warehouse or some less salubrious location. Not familiar with that word, salubrious. Interesting. And their cargo can be anything from moisture evaporators destined for a farm on Tatooine to blasters ordered by some mysterious Mon Calamari on Raltier. It's a good idea to build up a list of contacts with whom to trade, as diversity is the spice of life. Pilots who put all their eggs in one basket when it comes to picking contacts tend to find themselves going very swiftly out of business when the authorities catch up with that contact. Most jobs require pickup and delivery of the specified goods in a set time for a specific fee. Pilots can expect a distinctly average rate per ton of legitimate cargo being shipped per day, barely enough of a return to keep flying. Risky runs carrying more lucrative illegal cargo possession, of which perhaps carried the death penalty, paid much, much more. Dangerous game. The story of Han Solo's fall from grace of Jabba the Hutt is an oft-told cautionary tale used to warn emerging smugglers of the danger of working for someone else and the necessity of getting to know your employer. One day, your very life depends on how well you know the person or organization you are working for, or, as in Solo's case, the Hutt holding the leash. Smugglers share Solo's story to show the Corellian captain probably would have evaded capture by the Hutt or one of his goons if Han not rashly thrown his lot in with the rebel alliance. Solo had managed to stay one step ahead of the Hutt's anger and his retinue of hitmen and bounty hunters until he decided to help the would-be Jedi Luke Skywalker rescue Rebel Alliance leader Princess Leia Organa from the Death Star. From that moment, he also made an enemy of Emperor Palpatine and his enforcer Darth Vader, and earned a huge bounty that took him from being a small-time criminal to a big-time Imperial target. A price on his head. Jabba the Hutt threatened to put a price on Solo's head after the captain of the Millennium Falcon dumped a spice shipment ahead of an Imperial boarding. Even though he had no choice in the matter, Solo knew that at the time Jabba would be furious. Still, he knew he was valuable to the Hutt and played that knowledge to his advantage. He almost succeeded. Han Solo, along with his ship, was one of the most valuable assets Jabba the Hutt owned. The Corellian might have argued about the ownership thing, but never directly to Jabba. He promised Jabba he'd pay him back, but work was scarce, and the Hutt, who wanted the infamous Millennium Falcon more than he wanted its pilot, wasn't inclined to help. Jabba sent the very disposable Greedo to help Han to remind him to pay up. Hutt vengeance. Meeting Jabba later, Han was able to sweet talk the crime lord one more time. He only had to make a passenger run to Alderaan and get back to pay his debt with interest. Even Han knew it was his last chance, but Jabba was content that he'd get more credits than the dumped shipment had been worth. By now, of course, everyone knows things didn't go according to plan or Jabba or Solo. Han got his reward eventually, but he then made the bold decision to join the Rebel Alliance. He even used his knowledge of Jabba's operations to help the Alliance steal one of Jabba's ships and interfere in his business dealings with the Empire. Left with no other choice, Jabba sent the legendary bounty hunter Boba Fett after him. Before long, the Krillin was frozen in carbonite block, hanging on Jabba's wall. Luckily, Jabba's weakness for gifts and flattery meant Solo's friends were able to bluff their way into his palace and rescue Solo, ultimately causing Jabba his life. So we're all familiar with that, right? Crime syndicates. Let's go over this real quick. While many individual crime lord Crime lords prospered and some run large smuggling operations. The biggest profits have always been controlled by the organized crime syndicates, those whose reach in a galaxy is galaxy-wide. Such organizations thrive on disorder. One of the most powerful, the mysterious and secretive Black Sun, prospered during the Clone Wars. When Emperor Palpatine took control, the criminal organization formed what was mutually advantageous uh, working relationship with the Empire, which saw Black Sun controlling the flow of large amounts of contraband through the Outer Rim in particular. Operating on a smaller scale but no less effectively, the Pike Syndicate was a powerful cartel whose criminal activities gave them almost total control of the production of raw spice and its flow from Kessel to Coruscant, using independent smugglers and freighter captains on the notorious Kessel Run to ensure spice deliveries. Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum had tried to bring the organization to heel, but the Pikes killed his envoy, Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. Years later, during the Clone Wars, the Pike Syndicate allied themselves with Darth Maul and his Shadow Collective, bringing Jabba to life. So we probably all know this one, but let's go through it anyway. Jabba the Hutt was originally played in A New Hope by Irish actor Declan Mulholland in a fur jerkin. George Lucas cut the scene from the original release, reinstating it in 1997 special edition release of the film, but overlaying the actor with a digital Jabba the Hutt based on the one that appeared in Return of the Jedi. That Jabba the Hutt was a model sculpted from 4 tons of clay and animated by 4 puppeteers inside, including 2 on the head. I operate Jabba's right arm and the jaw of his mouth, and I do the voice at the I do the voice at the moment to make the lips sync, and between Toby and myself, we do the body movements," said puppeteer Dave Barkley, and from Star Wars The Jedi, The Making of a Saga. I do the left hand and the tongue, and my right hand is free inside the head and basically works his head control, tipping it front and back, left and right, up and down. I have one other control that I can swivel the head, revolve it, and for certain shots, I have the tongue. I have a couple of cable controls that do snarls around the mouth, said Toby Philpott. There were another 2 inside, one in the belly, another in the tail, operating those parts. A fifth person provided the smoke for Jabba's hookah pipe. There you go. So that's what Jabba was supposed to look like originally from original drawings. But obviously, it's not exactly what he looks like. His arms aren't that long, and uh, yeah, head's a little bit different. So there you go. That is everything about smuggling crime bosses. So in this episode, we worked on this part, and in the next episode, we're going to get this last piece and the 2 parts to hold it all together. We'll see if that's all we do in the next episode. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I want to thank you all for watching. May the Force be with you always.